Go outside right now and stand in your yard. Feel that? The wind moving across your property, brushing past your house, bending the trees at the edge of the lot. That wind is energy. Free, endless, pouring across your land every single day, doing absolutely nothing for you. And meanwhile, a meter bolted to the side of your house keeps spinning, and once a month a utility company sends you a bill for electricity generated somewhere far away, piped to you through wires you do not own at a price you do not set. Here's the part that should stop you cold. There was a time within living memory when the family that lived on land like yours would have laughed at that bill, because the wind you are standing in right now used to power American homes directly by the millions, and almost nobody alive today remembers that it ever happened. There's a machine you can build out of a car alternator and a few dollars of hardware store parts that turns that wind into electricity you own outright. It charges a battery bank. It runs your lights, your phone, your radio, your tools. It works at night in a storm when the sun is down and the grid is dead and your whole street has gone dark, and the design is not new or experimental. It is a rediscovery of a technology that quietly electrified rural America 100 years ago and was then deliberately pushed aside, not because it stopped working, but because it worked too well for the wrong people. By the end of this video, you are going to know how to build one. Let me show you the finished machine first so you know where we're headed. This is it. A set of blades I carved from PVC pipe, spinning a car alternator mounted on a simple pivot with a tail to keep it pointed into the wind. And these two wires coming off it are charging this battery. From nothing but the breeze crossing my yard, it cost me under $40 in parts I mostly already had. And once it is up on a tower, it works around the clock for years, asking for nothing. So the question that should be nagging at you is obvious. If this is real, if a farmer could do it 100 years ago, with far cruder tools than we have today, why is there not one of these on every rural rooftop in the country? Why did you have to hear about it from a video instead of from your own grandfather? Stay with me, because the answer is one of the most quietly infuriating stories in American history. It runs through a laboratory in Cleveland in 1888, across the windswept farms of the Great Plains in the 1920s, where families listened to the radio on power they made themselves, and straight into a government program in 1935 that, with the best of intentions, turned a nation of energy-independent farmers into permanent utility customers. Once you understand how that happened, you will never look at your electric bill the same way again. Let me start where the science starts, because this is not fringe and it is not a trick. It is the single most basic principle in all of electrical generation, and you already half know it. Every power plant on Earth, no matter what it burns, does the same fundamental thing at its core. It spins a magnet inside a coil of wire. That is it. That is the whole secret of electricity. When a magnet moves past a coil of copper wire, it pushes the electrons in that wire into motion, and moving electrons are electric current. A coal plant burns coal to make steam to spin that magnet. A nuclear plant splits atoms to make heat to make steam to spin that magnet. And a wind generator? A wind generator skips every single one of those middle steps. The wind pushes the blades spin the magnet, and electricity comes out. No fuel, no fire, no steam, no smoke. The wind does directly, for free, the exact job that a power company burns mountains of fuel to accomplish. When you understand that, the whole thing stops feeling like magic and starts feeling like something that was obviously always possible, because it was. And a man proved it before the automobile was even common. In the winter of 1888 in Cleveland, Ohio, an inventor named Charles Brush erected an enormous machine in his backyard. It was a wind turbine 56 feet tall with a rotor the size of a house, and it was the first wind turbine in history to automatically generate electricity. It charged batteries in his cellar, and it powered the lights of his mansion for 20 years. In 1888, before most American homes had any electricity at all, a man was lighting his house with the wind. This was not a lucky accident. Over in Denmark, around the same time, a scientist named Poul La Cour was refining wind electricity into a genuine science, running experiments that turned Brush's brute force machine into an efficient, repeatable technology. The knowledge was real, it was documented, and it was spreading. And then it found the place on Earth where it was needed most. Picture the American Great Plains in the 1920s. Endless farmland, endless wind, and no power lines for 100 miles in any direction. The cities had electricity. The farms did not. The grid simply had not reached them. And the power companies had no interest in stringing expensive wire across empty prairie to serve a handful of scattered families. So those families did what self-reliant people have always done. They solved it themselves. A whole industry sprang up to sell them the answer, and its name has been almost entirely erased from memory. Winchargers. Companies like Jacobs Wind Electric and the Wincharger Corporation sold small, rugged wind turbines that a farmer bolted to the roof of his barn or the top of a tower beside his house. The wind spun the blades spun a generator, and the electricity charged a bank of glass batteries in the cellar. And just like that, a farm in the middle of nowhere had lights, had a radio so the family could hear news and music and the voice of the wider world for the first time, had power made on their own land, owned outright, paid for once. By the 1930s, hundreds of thousands of these Winchargers were humming on farms across the plains. An entire generation of rural Americans lit their homes and powered their radios with the wind, completely independent of any utility, beholden to no monthly bill. Hold on to that image, because it is the whole idea in one picture. A family standing on their own land, making their own power from the wind that crossed it, owing nothing to anyone. That was not a fantasy. That was Tuesday in Kansas in 1932, and within 20 years it was gone. Not because it failed, because of what happened next. Before I tell you how it disappeared, I want to talk to the person watching this who is already picturing where a tower would go on their property. You are exactly who this channel is for. Not to sell you anything, because there is nothing to sell, only a machine you build once and own forever. If reclaiming that kind of independence matters to you, subscribe, because that is the entire purpose here. And send this to the one person you know with a bit of land, a windy hilltop, or a homestead dream, because they need to see that this was real and is still possible before they resign themselves to a lifetime of utility bills. Now stay with me, because the story of how a nation of wind-powered farmers became a nation of grid customers is the most important part, and it did not happen the way you might expect. In 1935, the United States government created the Rural Electrification Administration. Its mission was genuinely good, and I want to be fair about that, because the truth here is more honest and more interesting than a simple villain story. Rural families deserved reliable power, and the Winchargers of the day, for all their independence, had real limits. When the wind did not blow, the batteries ran down. Storage was expensive and heavy. It took work and know-how to keep a system running. So the government funded a massive push to string power lines across rural America and connect every farm to the central grid. And here's the thing. It worked. The grid arrived. It was cheaper up front because it was subsidized. It was effortless because the family did not have to build or maintain anything. You just flipped a switch and paid a bill. And in the face of that, the Wincharger industry collapsed almost overnight. Why would a farmer maintain his own turbine and battery bank when a subsidized wire could deliver unlimited power for a small monthly payment? One by one, the Winchargers came down off the barns and the towers. They rusted in fields, got sold for scrap, or ended up forgotten in the backs of sheds. And within a generation, the knowledge that ordinary families had once made their own electricity from the wind faded almost completely from American memory. Nobody banned it. Nobody destroyed it. It was simply outcompeted by something cheaper and easier. And in exchange for that cheapness and ease, an entire nation quietly traded away its energy independence and became, farm by farm and home by home, a permanent customer. That is the real story, and it is worth understanding clearly, because it explains something about the world you live in now. The convenient option is almost never the independent option. And the moment you stop making a thing yourself, someone else gets to decide what it costs you forever. But here's what did not change. The wind still blows across your land exactly as hard as it blew across that Kansas farm in 1932. The physics of a spinning magnet has not changed since Charles Brush lit his mansion in 1888. The only thing that was ever lost was the knowledge that you could do this yourself. And that knowledge is completely, entirely recoverable on a workbench this weekend for the price of a few dinners out. So let me show you how to build one. This is the part that turns you from someone who knows a forgotten piece of history into someone who owns a machine that makes power from the sky. The heart of your wind generator is the part that turns spinning motion into electricity. And this is where I'm going to be honest with you in a way that will save you a lot of frustration. The title of this video says car alternator, because a car alternator is the part almost everyone has access to. It is cheap or free from any junkyard, and it absolutely can work. But you need to understand its weakness so you can work around it. A standard car alternator is designed to spin very fast, thousands of RPM, driven by an engine belt, and it needs a little electricity fed into it to get started. Wind does not spin things that fast, so a raw car alternator, straight off a car, is actually a poor wind generator unless you either gear it up or modify it. The better version, and the one serious builders use, is a permanent magnet alternator, sometimes called a PMA, or a permanent magnet motor pulled from a treadmill, because those generate electricity at low RPM with no external power needed, which is exactly what wind gives you. So here's your honest choice. Start with a car alternator to learn the principle cheaply, knowing you may need to gear it up. Or spend a little more on a permanent magnet alternator or a salvage treadmill motor for a version that actually performs well in real wind. I would rather tell you that now than have you build a beautiful machine that never lights a bulb. The second piece is the blades, the part that catches the wind. You do not need carbon fiber or a factory. For generations, builders have carved excellent blades out of a simple length of PVC pipe, cut lengthwise and shaped into a gentle airfoil, or out of wood if you have the skill. A rotor of 3 blades, each 2 to 3 feet long, is a proven, balanced, reliable starting point. The third piece is the hub that connects your blades to the alternator shaft. The fourth is a tail vane, a simple flat fin of sheet metal or plywood mounted behind the generator, whose only job is to keep the whole assembly pointed into the wind automatically, the way a weather vane does. The fifth is the mount, a pivot that lets the machine swivel freely to follow the wind. And then the electrical side, a blocking diode so your battery does not drain back into the generator when the wind stops. A charge controller, critically important to keep the battery from overcharging when the wind is strong. And the battery bank itself, which is where your power is stored for the calm hours and the dark nights. Total cost, and depending on how much you salvage, runs from around $40 for a scrappy learning build to a few hundred for a serious permanent one. Compare that to a lifetime of electric bills. Here's how it goes together. Step 1, mount your alternator or motor solidly to a metal frame or a sturdy wooden block with the shaft facing forward into the wind. Step 2, attach your carved blades to the hub and the hub to the shaft, making sure the assembly is balanced, because an unbalanced rotor will shake itself and your tower to pieces over time. Spin it by hand. It should turn smoothly and freely. Step 3, bolt your tail vane to the back of the frame so the machine will weather vane into the wind on its own. Step 4, mount the whole assembly on a free spinning pivot at the top of a tower. And I want to stop on the tower because it is the mistake that ruins most first builds. Wind near the ground is slow, choppy, and turbulent, broken up by your house, your trees, your fences. The good, strong, steady wind is up high. A wind generator on a short pole in your backyard is a disappointment. The same generator on a 30-foot tower up in clean air is a power plant. Height is not optional. It is half the machine. Step 5. Run your wires down the tower to your blocking diode, then to your charge controller, then to your battery bank, matching your positive and negative connections carefully at every stage. Step 6. Connect a simple voltage meter or your battery monitor and wait for a good breeze. When the blades spin up and you watch that battery voltage begin to climb, with no wire to any pole, no meter spinning, no bill accruing, you will feel the exact thing that Kansas farmer felt in 1932. The quiet satisfaction of power you made yourself. Now I have to be as honest with you as this channel always is, because a promise without its limits is just a sales pitch, and I'm not selling you anything. Let me be very clear about what this is and what it is not. Wind is intermittent. When the wind does not blow, this machine makes nothing, which is exactly why you need a battery bank to store power for the calm hours, and it is the same limitation that let the grid outcompete the Winchargers a century ago. A single homemade turbine of this size is not going to run your central air conditioning or your electric dryer. It is a real, meaningful source of power for your lights, your electronics, your communications, your tools, and your emergency needs, and it can be scaled up with bigger machines and more of them. But be honest with yourself about your average wind speed. If you live somewhere with almost no wind, this is not your technology, and I would rather tell you that than take your money's worth of hope. And it must be built safely. A spinning rotor is dangerous. A tower can fall, and electricity, even at battery voltages, must be wired correctly with proper fusing. Check your local zoning and any HOA rules before you put up a tower, because those vary and they matter. Build it right, site it well. Respect the wind, and it will serve you for decades, exactly as it served the families who came before us. Because here's the truth this whole story has been building toward. The wind has not weakened since 1888. The physics of a magnet spinning inside a coil has not changed and cannot change. The only thing that was ever lost was the memory that ordinary people on ordinary land once made their own electricity from the sky and owed no one a cent for it. That memory was not stolen in a dramatic robbery. It was quietly traded away, farm by farm, for the convenience of a wire and the ease of a switch, until an entire nation forgot it had ever been independent at all. You just took that memory back. Every person who raises one of these machines on a tower turns the wind crossing their land into power they own outright, and rejoins a tradition that stretches from Charles Brush's backyard in 1888 to the wind-charged farms of the Great Plains, to the off-grid homesteads quietly doing it again today. That is not a gadget. It is a small spinning declaration of independence. The most powerful thing you can do with this is not keep it to yourself. Share it with the person on the windy hilltop, the friend chasing a homestead, the family member tired of a bill that only ever climbs. Every time this knowledge spreads, a 100-year-old kind of freedom gets a little easier to reclaim. The farmers in 1932 lit their homes with the wind and never sent a dollar to a power company to do it. The wind that powered them is blowing across your yard right now, waiting for you to put it to work. So build it, raise it, and let the sky pay your electric bill.